Hello, in this video I'm just going to briefly talk about this 3D printed model that I finished with acrylic paints. It is the Moon City model, which was designed by Kijai. I've got a link to the STL below. It is free to download, um, and this was actually the first model by this designer that I ever painted or well, I never asked for it to be printed. My husband found it and he printed it, and I was so excited to paint it as soon as I saw it. And anyway, this is the first one. I've done 3 now, possibly 4. I think just 3 of them. Actually, when I was halfway through painting this one, I asked my husband to do me a mini one because I wanted one as like a Christmas tree ornament. And here's my little one. Isn't it delightful? And it's just got an eye screw screwed into the top of it. And I was really looking forward to getting some photographs of this hanging on my Christmas tree this year, but well, last year, I guess. I keep forgetting it's 2018. Anyway, my Christmas tree looked like hell this year, and it didn't do the model any favors, so I don't actually have those pictures, but at some point, I will get a picture of this hanging in a Christmas tree, and it's going to be awesome. Anyway, I painted these both with pretty much the same details, so I'll just talk about the big one because it's a lot easier for you to see. I have to say that this webcam I'm using doesn't do it justice at all. It looks a million times better in person, and in like still photographs. I have several still photographs on my blog, which is also linked in the description of this video. Anyway, on to the painting. I just use simple acrylic paints, nothing very expensive, nothing like the War Games paints, which are very small bottles for a great deal of money. These are just hobby paints. Even the metallics are hobby paints. I also have a link in the video description to another video just about the materials I use, so I don't have to repeat myself all the time about that. Anyway, what I want to talk about is kind of the process I use, because I always see people like who comment on my pictures and even comment on other people's models that are painted. Oh, I wish I could paint. Oh, I wish I could do that. And I mean, you're really into printing 3D models. Why not finish them? It's really not difficult. The hard work is really done for you by the designer, and this particular designer makes a really easy job for me painting them, I have to say. And that's why I paint so many of his models. Um, so when I saw this model, I thought, oh, I want to do something with the background here. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I did like a starry sky and kind of a Milky Way running through it? It's really hard to see here, but it's kind of Milky Way-ish through here, and then I speckled on the stars with a paintbrush, believe it or not. But let's rewind to the beginning of the painting process. The first thing you need to do is obviously clean up your model. If it's got, excuse me, if it's got any stray baubles or anything, just clip them off, sand any bits that need to be sanded. If a part didn't print quite the way you wanted, for example, this middle thing here never prints the way I want it to. Some of the columns are always missing, and that has nothing to do with the STL. It's totally our printer because it always fails in different places every time. But yeah, so I just make the most of it. I clip out the bits. I sometimes I rebuild bits, but anyway, this was actually a pretty good print to start with. So once you're done all your sanding, filing, and clipping to get the model ready to paint, you prime it. Now, a lot of people use spray primer, and this particular model I've seen painted a lot of times, I should say, in just spray paint, and it looks great that way, but it's still not very detailed, and this model has so many incredible little facets and details to get into. I just really wanted to bring those out. So I primed it with just plain acrylic paint. You can do spray primer, it's a lot easier, a lot faster. In Scotland, where the wind is always blowing, spray paint is just not an option for me most of the time, I'll be honest. So, yeah, I normally just prime with a brush, and if my paint is too viscous, I will just water it down with some water because it's acrylic paint, and that's how you thin it out, just some tap water. So yeah, I primed the whole thing in like this color here, gray, this moon gray, um, because it's kind of the color I usually prime in. There's probably a lot more thought I should put into priming, but I'll level with you, I don't really put that much thought into priming. So the whole thing was just that gray, and I let it sit overnight because it needs to dry really, really well. And then the next day, I just started adding in my colors. I blocked in the base colors, which was a dark blue, and I kind of did a gradient to black at the tip and more blue down here. And then from here to here, the base was all just silver. Then I let that dry, and I used a black wash actually to get into all these little crevices inside here with the rocks and the little paint, the little steps here and here. And for the back, I also did a black wash to darken up the tip. Oh, sorry, to darken up the tip here, so that I had a really distinctive gradient there. The next thing I did was I worked on this Milky Way bit, and if you see like the cloudy kind of white that runs through here, that's just washes of white, probably a good 3 or 4 washes, to be honest, just a little bit at a time. And then I let it dry, and then I reapplied until I got the layers up to where I wanted. Um, then once all of that was kind of the way I wanted it, I applied the stars with a toothbrush. I took an old toothbrush, loaded it up with white and silver paint, kind of in a mixture, and I flicked it on there, and it made a really nice random starry pattern. I didn't want to paint them on because if you paint on stars, even if you're trying to be random, I think you'll still get kind of a pattern that you don't want. So anyway, the flicking method works, but I also kind of masked off this bit with a sheet of paper to make sure that I didn't speckle all in here. The next thing I did, once that was all dry, and I do allow usually a day between drying, you don't need to leave a day, but with acrylic paint, if it's even the tiniest bit wet still and you try to put on another layer, you can lift like 3 layers of paint right down to the plastic if you're not careful, and you just end up with this big hole in your work, and it's really, really frustrating and horrible. Anyway, the next thing I did was I took this kind of coppery color, which I really wasn't sure would work. It's one of my favorite colors. I thought with the blue, would it look awkward and horrible? But I think I got kind of lucky because it ended up looking really good. But I did all the tops of the buildings first, and then I did kind of a wash over the buildings just to see what it looked like. And I do this a lot with my painting. I'll go back and forth, and if I don't like something, I'll paint over it again. The only thing that you don't want to do, obviously, is put too many layers so that you actually destroy fine details. But there's no danger of that here because the details are pretty ridged. Anyway, so once I built up the layers of the copper, I went in, and it took me a really long time to go through all these little windows and doors, the little doorways and things, and I did that with a really fine brush. And that's really all I did to bring this to life. There was one final step. I thought, well, what if the sun was shining on this and making it kind of gleam? What would I get? I thought I'd get a bit more gold. So I took some metallic gold paint and I dry brushed it just kind of to the fronts of things, just a wee bit to give it that extra bit of gold shine. Because when I first looked at this, I thought, "Oh, it looks kind of like a geode." It reminds me of a geode that's been cracked open, so on the outside, it's just a dull stone, but on the inside, it's glittering and gleaming and all metallic and lovely. So that's what was kind of running through my head, and so I wanted to make sure that it really shone, and it does. It catches the light in the room really beautifully, and I'm extremely happy with how the model turned out. Um, so that's about all for this video. If you have any questions on the painting side of things or on the printer side of things, which, I'd have to get my husband to answer because I don't do the printing, please leave them in the comments below. Bye!